Hello everybody, I hope you all are having a wonderful day. Today we're going to be talking about the Humble Choice monthly bundle for April. I think most people would agree that this month is pretty weak, but I'll save my general thoughts for the conclusion section. I have a lot of games to go over, and as you can probably see, the video is quite long, so let's just get right into it. As always, I played each game for about 30 minutes to an hour in order to get my first impressions for each game, and just to kind of get a feel for the general gameplay and develop my thoughts on it. Okay, so the first game we have up here is Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts. To be honest, I totally forgot that this franchise existed. I feel like it kind of dropped off the map. But my first impressions of this game were good. I do like some types of stealth games, and I am a fan of sniping especially. Back when I played Arma 2, I was the guy that could sit for hours on some random hill on Wasteland servers. In this game, you play as a mercenary dropped into the Siberian wilderness to complete various objectives around 5 large maps. Some examples of these objectives range from downloading some data, finding an informant, or of course, assassinating a target. But even when there isn't a specific target to assassinate, there are plenty of mans to shoot. The maps aren't huge, wide open type map. The first ones I played was probably about the size of a small battlefield map, but that isn't a bad thing because it seemed very tailored to giving multiple ways to approach an objective and struck a good balance between long shooting galleries and close quarter spaces. The shooting is somewhere in between casual and complex. You must take into consideration ranging and wind when making long shots, but the game gives you an indicator that shows how your bullet will travel, so it never really feels unnecessarily complicated. It's really satisfying when you land the perfect shot, and the game does that classic sniper game bullet time thing where it follows the bullet right on its path to your target's brain. And you really do have to think about how you engage your enemies. It can be tempting to just sit in the same place and continually snipe at enemies, but eventually they'll start getting an idea of your location. It was pretty funny and surprising when I looked through my scope and I just saw this guy staring at me with his binoculars. In many cases, it's best to pick a few guys off and then move to another position. Overall, if you like games like Sniper Elite, then you'll probably like this game, but I can see this not really attracting many people to buy the bundle. Our second headliner here is F1 2020. The title of the game pretty much says it all. It's a Formula 1 game. Just like all the other racing and sports games that release every year, in this game you get to do a career mode that takes you through multiple seasons, I guess, of racing. You get to use all the real F1 cars, base your character model, at least off of real racers, race on 22 tracks around the world. There's also a mode where you can build your own team and choose your sponsors and engine suppliers and stuff. It has multiplayer, which is nice, although I didn't have time to play it. These races are really long because, they're F1 races, so the ones I did at the start of my career mode really sucked up a lot of time. But it looks like even they have ranked modes and championships, so that's pretty cool. As you progress in career mode, there are also upgrade paths you can take for your cars and facilities, so I can see that maybe there is some replayability in terms of what builds you can take or what order you unlock these. It looks like if you're an F1 fan, this game has a lot of content for you, and you probably don't need me to tell you that this is worth getting. You probably have already gotten the bundle and probably aren't even watching this video because to you, it's definitely worth getting this bundle simply for this game. The game is worth $70 MSRP, so getting it for $12 is definitely a steal. The game has 91% positive reviews on Steam, so F1 fans who are more knowledgeable on this stuff than me definitely enjoy it. I had fun. Really, I did. It's really satisfying to overtake the person you've been tailing for several laps. And the game runs great and feels really immersive, even though I was playing on baby mode, I think, with all these, on-screen hints and guides. But if I wasn't making a video for this bundle, this game really wouldn't have sold me on getting the bundle. And I'm probably not going to be touching this game again when the video is finished. Shenmue III. So this is a really weird game to have for a headliner. The original Shenmue 1 and 2 came out in 1999 and 2001 respectively. So this game is really catered towards people who originally played those games back in the day. Considering that I, and probably a decent part of the humble audience, didn't even know how to speak when the first game came out, you can be sure that I don't have any nostalgia for this game. Can really see why it does hit that nostalgia spot though. It looks and feels like an homage to the old games, and in this case, that isn't a compliment. It is being sold at a AAA price on Steam, but the graphics and overall polish are pretty poor. Facial animations are bad, the voices aren't that great, and the dialogue is jarring and inhuman. Also, for some reason, during dialogue they do a fade to black and fade in every few sentences for absolutely no reason, which gets pretty distracting.
Hey, Shenhua.
We have to get to the village.
Let's go. Do you have any idea where your father might have gone?
No, I don't.
Has this ever happened before?
With my father?
Yeah. Has he ever disappeared without telling you?
No, never.
I see. Are you certain that letter from the cave was...
It's his handwriting, without a doubt.
Okay. Are you sure it didn't contain any clues?
Why does it keep cutting, dude?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't care about the...
At best, this is AA quality. Even looking at the Steam reviews, many of the positive reviews highlight how the game is really a mixed bag and something that fans of the originals would enjoy. Some of the positive reviews outright say that it is bad and that they just like it for the nostalgia. The whole time I was playing, I kind of just got the impression that it was a much worse Yakuza type game. Honestly, the best part about this game was that I could redeem it on Epic and I didn't have to put it on my Steam library to create more clutter. If you're a fan of the originals, get the bundle for this, otherwise don't bother. Before we move on to main assembly, if you've liked the video so far, don't forget to hit that like button or maybe even subscribe to the channel. I do lots of other stuff on this channel, like talking about TV shows and doing other game reviews, so maybe that'll interest you, and if it does, check it out. Alright, now main assembly, it's big brain time, boys and girls. It's time to build us some robots. This game is alright, but it'll only appeal to people who like this type of building game where you can basically build vehicles from scratch. Like Space Engineers or maybe Satisfactory. Jumping into the tutorial, I immediately noticed that the AI teaching me stuff was GLaDOS, which was pretty funny, but it was also very unnerving having GLaDOS not be sarcastic to me and genuinely nice. The tutorial for building basic cars and rovers was pretty good, but then I saw that programming was later down the line, and I panicked right back to the menu. I don't have much time to build, so eventually I just downloaded someone else's hard work from the workshop and flew it around a bit. It's good that they have workshop support, as this is exactly the type of game that needs it. Now, this game is buttery smooth during normal play, great FPS, slick UI, great movement and control of your vehicles, but when you go on multiplayer and try to dogfight with a bunch of people also using complicated vehicles from the workshop, it can definitely tank the frames a little bit. Now, I'm no stranger to games where you have to build complicated and smart contraptions. I have like 400 hours in Kerbal Space Program, but I really felt out of my depth here. I kind of found it overwhelming, as it's not like KSP where you're placing pre-built parts. A lot of the structure, or fuselage I guess, you have to design yourself, and I'm not that good at modeling things, so everything I make kind of looked like trash. I think it would be nice if there were some more pre-built parts to use. Perhaps if I really like this type of game and that type of gameplay where you just sit down and work on perfecting your machine for hours and hours on end and really wanted to learn how to build nice looking things and program, then I would really like this game. But I personally don't feel like I can put in the time to do that. It's not a bad game, but it's not for me. I'm completely neutral to it, and I would definitely say that this is a niche game. Right, next up, Rock of Ages 3, Make and Break. This is probably one of the strongest games on this bundle, which is weird because in a better bundle, I would say that this game is good, but a member of the supporting cast, if you catch my drift. In any case, I haven't really played a Rock of Ages game before, but I have watched people play it in the past, and I've never heard anyone say anything bad about the game or the series. It's normally around $40, so if you wanted it, this game should be worth getting the bundle for. The series has a pretty unique concept, so in the standard war mode, you alternate between tower defense and a sort of racing platformer. The aim is to drive your boulder as hard as possible into the enemy's castle door and lower its HP to 0 to win, meanwhile defending your own castle from your enemy's boulder. Rolling the rocks is on a cooldown, and during that time you're placing defenses along your own track to defend against your enemy's boulder, and they are doing the same thing on their track. I played a bit of the campaign, but with the time I had I couldn't really get far, and it's clear that there are a lot of towers and types of boulder to unlock later on. The game also has a great visual style and sense of humor that really livens it up.
Aha! You come to me, the mighty, the tall Napoleon Bonaparte, to learn the art of warfare, do you? In my extraordinary humility, I shall teach you.
There's also a mode where you can build your own maps to share with the community. I'm sure that creative people would have a blast with this. I downloaded a map from the workshop and I thought it was pretty well done. It was a racing map, so I couldn't just race through it. It was pretty fun. I'm not a good builder, so I couldn't really create anything good when I tried to use the building mode myself. I felt the controls were also a bit unintuitive in the building mode. It varied a lot from the standard controls that you would have in a building mode like this. Like let's just say you're building a park in Park Tycoon. Overall, high point for this bundle and well worth the $12 if you're interested. Coming off the peak of the bundle, we're going right into the valley. Remothered, Broken Porcelain ain't good. It's got mixed reviews on Steam, and just by checking the reviews there, I can pretty much confirm that I didn't just have a bad first impression. In fact, my notes from my first 30 minutes of gameplay, which was all I could bear, were pretty much the same as many of these Steam reviews. The plot is just poorly told and convoluted as hell, especially for someone who hasn't played the first game. I don't even care to explain the premise of the game, to be honest. After 30 minutes of playing, I couldn't even tell you. There's just so much info dumping here that you can't actually retain and process it all because it's just dumped on you so fast. It seems like they didn't even hire a writer for this project at all. The most basic rule of storytelling, show don't tell, is completely ignored here. I mean, the first of many cutscenes for the introduction sequence is literally just a 1 to 2 minute long summary of the last game, just straight out of wiki notes or something with a nice accent on it to make it seem in setting, and it just tells you exactly what happened. Imagine if talking about the last game was revealed to the player through notes or as side details in human-like dialogue. You could even keep the plot of the last game unknown for the players who are new so that it would be kind of a mystery for them to learn about. Another example is where this lady straight up monologues about her creepy employer's life story to you for about 3 minutes, even though she apparently thinks this kid is annoying and a nuisance. That's not how people are. If you think someone is annoying, you don't yap at them spreading secrets. The gameplay doesn't really bring anything new to the table, extremely standard mechanics, a crafting system even though you can carry only 3 items, your character walks at the speed of a snail, a couple jump scares, an introduction section where there's no escape and you have to die to progress, such a standard trope. The graphics look blurry and the voice acting and lip syncing is weird. The audio doesn't even always sound like it is coming from the person who is speaking, and the girl you're playing, who looks around 10, sounds like a 25-year-old. This game just does not seem polished at all. I would just stay away from this one. It's just trash filler for the bundle. In the Other Waters, you play as an AI in a malfunctioning diving suit on an alien planet's ocean. Inside the suit is a stranded scientist who is your companion through the game as you explore. Since you are the AI controlling the suit, the gameplay basically takes place on the map and software controls that the AI would supposedly have access to. I guess there are no cameras on this suit that has an artificial intelligence on it. This game has positive reviews and a lot of people were hyping it up on the subreddit. People like it for its unique concept, I guess, but personally I had to stop playing it. I was bored out of my mind and actually falling asleep at my computer while I was playing it, although to be fair, this was the first game I played after getting off of work. It's kind of basically just a walking simulator without the fun of being able to see things. It's just endless green, blue, and yellow of the HUD of the diving suit. It is thematically cool, I guess, that you have to rely on the scientists' descriptions of the world to imagine what is going on, but it does get dull when all that you're seeing are just different arrangements of dots. The gameplay is also just too slow and it's on rails. This game would be 3 times better if I didn't have to continuously click the same 3 buttons to scan and move down these nodes, and if I could actually control the suit myself more freely and smoothly. It kind of takes away from the whole walking simulator if you can't choose really where you want to walk besides 2 different routes that are pre-planned. This is definitely a niche game that will appeal to les indie game connoisseurs out there, but not to me. Now, Aven Colony came out of left field. I really enjoyed playing this game. I only expected it to be average, since at first glance it kind of looks like a run-of-the-mill sci-fi city builder with kind of a generic sci-fi style, but I ended up playing it for 3 hours, 3 times my set time for each game. Granted, I am a fan of these types of games, so I'm way more likely to be biased towards them, but I did not expect this game to be that engaging, honestly. If I had to find a game to compare this to, I would say Surviving Mars, although it plays a lot faster and it's a lot simpler. There is a sandbox mode, but the game has a campaign where you basically go between maps building cities to reach an objective in each one. The first mission took me around 2.5 hours to beat, whereas Surviving Mars is more organized along the lines that you would play a map for maybe 8 to 10 hours, at least in my experience. Like Surviving Mars, you are setting things up on a colony on an alien planet and have to manage things like food, electricity, air, water, and building material. In many respects, surviving Mars is much more complicated. Like in Surviving Mars, you have power lines and water pipes to transport things around, so you can have different enclosed settlements all connected to a singular system. Whereas in Aven Colony, you kind of just connect the tunnels your colonists walk through to everything, and everything kind of just magically flows through them. You also don't have to manage where cargo is stored and transported. Like in Surviving Mars, it kind of just teleports to where it needs to go. Where Aven Colony differs is that the planet you're landing on has life on it. It's not Mars, right? So it leans into that aspect in its mechanics. You have to defend your colony against invasive species and infectious life forms like the creep that attaches itself to buildings and giant worms. You can also use the local plant life to create new foods to supply your colony or drugs to enhance your colonists' abilities, sometimes with a trade-off like higher crime rates. If you like city builders and games like Surviving Mars, I definitely think this is a great game to pick up the bundle for. I had a great time with it, and I might even go back and play it again a little bit. Next up, Simulacra 1 and 2. So this part of the bundle actually is 2 different games that are kind of given as one. Both of them are mystery horror point-and-click games where you have to use a victim's phone in order to solve the mystery surrounding their supernatural death/disappearance. All aspects of the game are within the phones. You read texts, check photos, restore corrupted data, and basically use all types of things that you would normally do on a phone to solve puzzles. It's a pretty cool idea. It reminds me of Welcome to the Game a little bit, but much simpler. One example of this in action is trying to log into the victim's Twitter. They don't call it Twitter, but that's basically what it is, in order to find their last location. You have to click the Forgot Password button to have a password change email sent, but in order to change the password, you have to answer their security questions. You do this by texting their friends, searching through their photos, or in the case of Simulacra 2, even checking out their Instagram posts to find things in context. It's pretty cool. The second game is pretty similar to the first, but it just seems like they expanded more on the concept overall, and with the apps being more fleshed out and there being more content to explore, like the aforementioned Instagram pages. I also really like the additions of hints in the second game because I'm a noob and a lot of the puzzles I got stuck on. These games both surprised me. I'm not really a fan of point-and-click games, so I'm somewhat naturally biased against them, but I played both of these games over the 30-minute time window I set for each of them. So if you like this genre, you'll probably enjoy these games. I definitely wouldn't redeem these games if I wasn't making this video, but that comes down to personal preference. I thought these games would be bad, and they aren't. The only thing I didn't like was that I seemed to get soft-locked when I texted the wrong number to one of the victims' phones on the first game, but maybe I was bad or just missing something. 10 out of 10, I got to roleplay as a girl on Tinder. Colt Canyon is an action roguelike game set in a Wild West setting. Your partner has been captured by bandits and you have to shoot your way through this Wild West bandit-infested canyon to save them. Honestly though, even though that sounds kind of interesting, this is just a filler game. It's perfectly fine, few hours of fun, but I didn't really find it fun or compelling enough to want to pick it up again. There are good things about this game. It's got crisp controls, shooting these enemies is satisfying, and the art style is really good. The problem is that its gameplay is repetitive and really mundane for a roguelike. The main gameplay loop is pretty much just collecting ammo. I played maybe 4 different runs, and it felt like my guns and abilities never really differed all that much. The main appeal of roguelikes, at least to me, is that every run is different. Think of the wacky combinations of items that you can get in Binding of Isaac, or all the different guns in Enter the Gungeon. If I want to play a shooter roguelike, this game definitely does not offer anything substantial over Enter the Gungeon. I mean, look at this list of features on Steam. These guys are boasting about having boss fights, keyboard and mouse support, controller support, and permadeath in their roguelike game. I could go on, there's more things in this list that are funny, but this is like an FPS showing off that they have guns. Just crazy. Stay away from this game, it's not really worth redeeming. Skully is a puzzle platformer where you play as a reanimated skull molded by magic clay. It is a relatively unknown game, it's only got 14 Steam reviews, but it isn't a bad filler game. The controls are pretty tight. Skully is basically a glorified marble and is pretty damn maneuverable. This is definitely a game that works better on controller as you'll need to do a lot of precise platforming. Mainly you're trying to avoid falling in water or getting hit by water streams or water monsters because you're clay, right? I guess it dissolves you. But later on in the game, there are new enemies like these tentacle things that can one-shot you, and their hit detection was a little bit weird at times, but it's forgivable. When Skully falls in the water, he pretty much instantly dies, so this is definitely one of those platformers that you die a lot along a section, slowly learning how to play it as you go. Luckily, checkpoints are pretty generously spread out. Later in the game, there are new forms that Skully can transform into using the clay to address certain obstacles, like this tanky guy that can knock down these pillars and can take much more damage from water than regular Skully. The only criticism I have of this game is that the tutorial level was dreadfully boring. It went on like 5 minutes too long in my opinion. The last main game of this bundle is Popup Dungeon. I like this game more than I thought I would. It's a tactical roguelike RPG that is inspired by games like Dungeons & Dragons, but also from tactics games like XCOM. It has this really cool aesthetic where everything looks like it's made from paper crafts, which really emphasizes that tabletop feel. You assemble your team and then begin a campaign or dungeon, collecting upgrades along the way through making dice rolls outside of combat or by collecting loot from combat. The combat is very similar to most tactics games, and the abilities are mechanically pretty standard. They just seem more unique because they can be customized via the in-game editor to have unique flavor text and imagery. The very detailed editor that I previously mentioned is the main selling feature of the game, in which you can basically create any character that you want, like, favorite streamers, anime character, guy from a movie, whatever, meme. You want to make a troll face character, go for it. On top of their appearance, you can also change their ability names, items, pictures on the ability cards, and probably so much more. I just don't have the time to do that shit myself, so I downloaded SpongeBob, Sans from Undertale, and Zoidberg to play around with. There are definitely some issues though. Workshop support is heavily advertised, but it's handled very strangely. It just makes it more difficult for the player to find good things. You can't actually browse the workshop outside of the game on Steam, you have to do it in-game. Browsing things on the Steam workshop is just so much better because they have way better navigation, access, and filtering than what is present in-game, so I don't really understand the logic behind this poor design choice. It interferes with their main selling point, access to player-made content. It also seems like there are very few player-made campaigns created, which is disappointing because I was looking forward to that when I saw that it was a possibility, but most of the ones on the browser were work in progress or incomplete or just plain garbage by the looks of it. The other issue I had is that the user interface in combat isn't very intuitive and just wastes time. You have to drag your ability cards up in order to specifically target your abilities where you want, while double-clicking tells the game to use it on whatever it thinks is the best target, which isn't always what you thought was the best target. It takes too much time, just let me click the card and then the enemy. Why the fuck is it so complicated? This does not make any sense. Overall, sort of an average game, I guess. I'll probably play it a couple more hours, but a lot of people also agreed that these were issues, so whether this is worth buying is really up to you. I know some people I saw on Reddit were excited for this, and if you're one of them, I'm really happy for you. I hope you have a fun time, but the issues present in this game from what I see are pretty worrying, and people on Steam also mentioned that combat does get old after a while, which is like the main point of the game, so if the combat isn't good, why play it? So the last game in this bundle technically is the DRM free game of the month, Rogue Mansion, and it says it's a sneak peek, so I don't know, I guess the full game's coming, but spoiler alert, nobody's gonna play that, hopefully. This is just, why Humble? Why are you supporting ripoffs of big franchises with your DRM free games? Last month we had Ruin Raiders not so stealthily ripping off XCOM, and now we have this game blatantly ripping off Resident Evil. I mean, look at this, the whole setting, the style, the music, the gameplay, the menus, the enemy designs, it's all copied from Resident Evil. The only twist they have put on this game is that it's a roguelike, and I don't even think that is handled well. The game has a really stupid design choice where enemies will spawn in front of you, behind you, or even behind you and in front of you, always after you have entered a room. What the hell? These Resident Evil style rooms are tiny, you can't just spawn an enemy that can stun lock me right in front of me or behind me. This is stupid. It punishes the player for no reason. I get that it's a roguelike, but have the enemies spawn when I enter the room so that there's a shred of normalcy, so I can actually plan my encounter with them. I also couldn't bind my shotgun to any of my quick slots, so every time I found a shotgun I had to manually go into my menu to equip it every single time I wanted to use it. Don't bother with this one at all. I'm amazed that they can't scrape up better DRM free games. Alright, we managed to get through all of those games. I'd really like to thank you guys for sticking with me through that. For me, the best game in this bundle was Aven Colony. It was the only one that I played that actually hooked me. The bad games are going to have to be Shenmue, Remothered, and Rogue Mansion. The rest of the games are a resounding meh, shoulder shrug, I don't care. Not bad games generally, but not ones that I would have found compelling enough to make me want to buy the bundle. And considering how I didn't even think Aven Colony was going to be good, I definitely would not have purchased this bundle if I wasn't making a review. I know I said Rock of Ages and a few of the other games were good, and I stay by that, but I'm talking about my personal preferences here. The main problem with this bundle is that everything here that isn't trash is too niche. There are no games that a majority of people would look at and say, I really need that. And it's actually amazing that Humble still has this problem because almost all the reviewers have been saying this kind of thing about multiple different bundles this year. This month's headliners were basically weighted by, accessibility or, I guess, desirability, the same in terms of appeal as the indies and smaller games. They are not games that appeal to a broad audience, and the headliners really should be the fallback games that will get people to buy the bundle regardless of the indies. When the headliners are too niche, it becomes harder to justify buying the bundle. I really praise the February Choice bundle because Endless Space 2 and especially Moving Out really exemplified that general appeal aspect that you need in a headliner. When we take a look at this bundle's headliners, Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts really only appeals to people who are so into sniping games that they need something other than Sniper Elite to play. As I mentioned, I had already forgotten this franchise existed. As for F1, most people who are Formula 1 fans and wanted this game have probably already bought this game. I have checked its sale history and the average sale for this game was like 40% off, which is pretty good for a, $60 game that is only about a year old. And Shenmue is a game with pretty mixed reviews that only appeals to gamers who played a specific game franchise 20 years ago. I mean, I don't need to say more. I think sometimes we all focus too much on the fact that each bundle is $200 or whatever worth of games for $12. It doesn't really matter what the MSRP is. If you don't play any of those games, you lost $12 and people aren't going to buy the bundle. And I think for a lot of people, myself included, even if we do get $12 worth of value from the bundle, we would rather not spend that $12 on some games that we'll only play for a couple of hours only to have sit in our backlog for eternity. As I mentioned before, I definitely wouldn't have bought this bundle if I wasn't making this review, that's for sure. And I hope that Humble really takes this advice in terms of getting better headliners for the future moving forward, because as a reviewer, this wasn't really that fun for me to play, and it's kind of making me rethink the way I do the reviews. I might just go to reviewing the games like some other people are, where they don't play them and they just kind of do some research on them and talk about them, because playing a bunch of games that I don't want to play really fast to get a review out is not really why I started my channel. I want to play fun games. Many of the other bundles that I reviewed, I was fine with that because the games were pretty good. Like the last two bundles that I did were pretty good bundles, so I didn't really have a problem with playing those games. But this is kind of making me think, like, if more bundles are going to be like this format might not work because I have things that I need to do with my life, right? Like I can't waste time on things I don't like. Well, I'm going to stop rambling about this now. I think I've expressed most of my thoughts on this bundle and the games within it. I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I will see you in the next one.